Come on. Let's order.
All right, this is the continued hearing and benchmark application. It's April 4th, 2024. At the time that we ended our previous hearing or continued the hearing, we were in the middle of the testimony of Brian Kraus, and Mr. Freeman was just about to finish his questioning. Before we start, are there any housekeeping matters that we have to deal with?
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Just picking up on what Mr. Mancini had raised at the prior hearing, it was towards the end of the hearing, with regard to a possible view of the property. And I'll direct this to council. Mr. Mancini suggested that it might be worthwhile for council to actually come out and view the property and the surrounding area to get a better idea of what testimony has evolved so far. I spoke with Benchmark. Benchmark thinks that's a good idea as well, but it's obviously completely up to the discretion of council as to whether they would want to do that. And I just turn it to your attention and see what the pleasure of council would be in that regard.
Do we have to all be together, Mr. Ewald?
Excuse me?
Do we have to all be together?
I don't think you would have to all be there, but I think if it were to be worthwhile, anybody, everyone who's voting on it should be there, or nobody should be there. I don't think it would be good to.
I'm just thinking about schedules and time, of everyone's time, if it's like something we have to do together, because that's been pretty challenging.
Yeah, I mean, we're not anticipating that there'd be any presentation during this. It would just be a permission to walk through.
Yeah, absolutely. Just permission to walk through. I think Ms. Mancini was also interested in having council also walk around. I don't want to speak for you, Vince, but I'll walk along Danview Drive in the area where the present access is coming from the Bradley property and down the hill and that.
Is this something that we could do independent?
That was my question, if we could all be together.
I certainly have no objection to that. And actually, I think if council met separately, as long as there's not a majority there, I don't think that it would have to be advertised. I leave that from you though, Mr. Ewald.
Why is there snickering at that?
How do you make a record of going to, just good point, is there a majority? How do we have a record? I mean, I don't know, just a thought crossed my mind. That's why I kind of chuckled.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's feasible. I mean, I think if council as a unit agrees that all of us will make an effort to go visit the site and the same places, our representation that we did it and what dates we did it on, I think should be sufficient. We can put that on the record.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think about.
I don't think that we need to advertise it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll have council confer with me and I'll send notice over to you so that if whatever security procedures you have, and when you see our extremely attractive and handsome crew here walking through, they're going to not raise.
Yeah, I mean, we can make our appointment and then that gets to your concern. But I just, if you are requesting this and would like this to happen, I'm just thinking about how that actually happens in an appropriate time.
And getting and would both, I assume you'd want to be present as well. Both of you would want to be present. So
Usually at these functions, it's the attorneys don't make arguments, they just maybe point where people are and get them people oriented. That's about it.
understood. Yeah, just so we can always do it in a group of two as well. There's no quorum if our schedules align. So I guess that's I certainly don't have an issue against it. Again, I think to Kristen's point, it's just timing and trying to coordinate.
I just encourage you to do it sooner rather than later, because right now the school year is when there's no leaves on the trees and we're starting to get green. So in a couple of weeks, it'll be almost summer, and that's not when we're dealing with most of the activity at the school.
Well, that was why I asked the question around if we could do it together or separately. Thank you. All right, we'll talk with Mr. Ewald. Thank you.
Anything else?
And I just raised another issue about circulating dates. I know that unfortunately I have the two witnesses who were not able to be here. One has a court commitment presently, and the other one just missed his calendar and has profusely apologized. for not being able to be here tonight. But each of those witnesses, I would anticipate would be about 20 minutes of direct examination. I don't know how long cross-examination would take. That would then conclude my case. From that standpoint, I can't anticipate what the neighbors are going to be presenting, but I would assume that it would be at least 2 or 3 hearings. One of the offers that I made was to utilizing some of the scheduling software that they have on computers is to circulate to any of the stakeholders here, council members, attorneys, witnesses, where there might be some blackout dates that we know we couldn't meet, but then hopefully find some dates extending over the next few months so that we could conclude these hearings as efficiently as possible. And I'm happy to take on that labor and work.
Like a when to meet?
Right.
Yeah, so I will be out on medical leave for most of May. Let's take that into account.
So if that is something of interest to council, I certainly want to do that as well.
Would that pose any issues to do that?
I don't think so, not to just circulate dates, you know, but we will need by the end of this hearing to come up with a date for the next hearing.
Great. That's good. Anything else?
Mr. Freeman?
Yeah, before I continue my cross, I think it was almost midnight when we got started on this last witness, and I hadn't seen his report prior. I guess I want to raise a relevance objection really to his testimony and his report. I'm looking at his report, it says, you know, benchmark is up to keep the emergency access drive in place, but then it seems like the focus of his report is on how it would be better for security if the emergency access easement was eliminated. So, you know, I'm happy to continue my cross on it, but I guess as a basic premise, if benchmark is already opted to keep the emergency access drive in place, is how benchmark address their security issues relevant to the conditional use application at all?
You want to address that?
Well, the other issue that goes along with the emergency access is the installation of the bollards that are proposed at 2 ends. And in addition, the addition of the paving blocks that are going to demarcate the pedestrian areas in relation to new access drive. So I think from a safety standpoint and for pedestrian safety and restricting vehicular access, that's not supposed to be on the emergency access drive. I think that's why Mr. Krause's testimony is relevant.
Which bollards are you referring to? The collapsible ballot?
Correct.
He's already testified that they were acceptable for, you know, emergency responders.
Yeah, and that's why his testimony is relevant.
No, we're talking about the report, which seems to be geared to direct all safety deficiencies due to this emergency access easement that has existed for 50 years. And very little else is discussed.
So ultimately, he's already through his direct testimony and the standards of evidence here are relaxed. I think, you know, let's just finish up his cross-examination and if it's not.
The issue is outstanding though. The objection is made to this report, which goes way beyond this testimony and which is highly irrelevant.
All right, well, we'll take your objection and your advisement, but for now, we're going to allow it. We're going to allow the testimony.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bishop. So, Mr. Krause, I apologize, because I don't take good notes when I'm asking questions, so if it's possible, I might ask a question I already asked before. But you mentioned in your report that you're concerned about unauthorized access, right? There's two, as I read your report and your testimony, you're concerned about two different kinds of safety threats. Authorized access and unauthorized access. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So on the authorized access, it's primarily vehicular traffic in close proximity to children, has a danger of children being injured, right? Correct. Okay. And of course, there's safety procedures and precautions that can be taken to minimize that type of a safety threat, right?
Sure.
Okay. And then I believe we did touch on this a little bit, but as far as unauthorized access, Benchmark really has no provision since its inception to prevent unauthorized access to its campus, right?
Well, there's no, I think we discussed this before, but yeah, there's no, they don't have the vehicle entrance to the campus, gated off or anything like that. The main entrance, now the secondary entrance at the, there's a swinging gate at the entrance to the emergency easement, which is kind of closed, but not locked.
Right.
But no, there's nothing to restrict the vehicles from coming from the campus now.
Right, and the only way to do that is to really have a security gate closed off with some kind of either key card access or a security guard to ensure that whoever's coming on campus would be authorized, right?
There'd be a variety of ways to do it, but yeah,
Right.
essentially would be.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said eventually, to restrict access to the campus, you'd have to put a gate or some type of measure at the main vehicle entrance to the campus, yes.
And actually, in your proposal here, your recommendations, you don't recommend any type of restriction or ability to restrict unauthorized access, is that right?
No, I don't, because, one of the things we take into consideration in doing these reports and assessments are keeping, campus so that it's not a prison-like atmosphere. You want to keep it so that people can come and go, but you also want to make sure, ensure that restrict or you keep the unauthorized access to a minimum.
Okay. And, if there's someone unauthorized, whether someone meaning harm to students, or I think you mentioned in your report, some kind of issue with custody, maybe there's parental custody issues with one of the students. If that unauthorized person comes to campus, they really can access anywhere on campus with or without the presence or elimination of the emergency access easement. Can you agree with that?
Well, they can certainly access, you mean as the campus is now? I mean, as it exists currently?
Well, as it exists currently, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can access certain parking areas and travel lanes and so forth throughout the campus. Sure.
Well, and get out of the car and walk anywhere on campus, right?
Sure.
There's no limitations on their access to anywhere on the campus, right?
No, there's not.
So it seems like your report's trying to focus strictly on the threat of an unauthorized person coming onto campus with this emergency access.
I'm less worried about the unauthorized access. I'm more concerned about with that easement, if that's what we're talking about. I'm more concerned with authorized access and vehicles going up and down the easement when kids are crossing. That's what I'm more concerned about.
Okay, and as you stated, Benchmark has opted to keep the emergency access in place, but they've taken certain measures to prevent ordinary use of that easement now. Would you agree?
It appears they're going to, yes.
Okay, so under the proposed 5-year plan that's before the council, there isn't supposed to be any vehicular traffic down that easement other than what's permitted for emergency access, right?
That's the solution that, that I'm under the impression is going to happen.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Mancini?
Yes. Mr. Kraus, I was looking at your report. It's dated February 16 or 18. I'm sorry.
What's the question?
Well, I just want to make sure that's the date you dated it?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Was this a redraft of a prior report?
There was probably several drafts before I finalized it, yes.
Was this before? But this is still after the November 15th submission, correct?
November 15th submission of my,
Yeah, but was there another report before the November 15th submission, the third submission made by Benchmark to this board?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
There was the application was made first on March 3rd, 2020, 2024, or 23, I think. Then there was a subsequent one made, I believe, in May, further revision, which had the, emergency access redirected and all, to the sides and whatnot. And then there was an action filed in court, and there was a redraft of a third submission filed on November 15th, 2023. I'm saying to you, at what point in time was this, the first draft of this report put together?
My report, probably in the days just prior to February 16th.
I'm sorry, this,
The other things that you're referring to, sir, I have no involvement in.
I understand. I'm just asking you, in this time frame, when did you prepare your first draft?
I'm saying in the days leading up to February 16th.
So the emphasis was made on the removal or the redirection of the emergency access easement. And from my reading of it, it seems to blame or raise the only concern as the emergency access easement. Is that correct?
I did probably a 78-page report on vulnerabilities.
I can only review what's here before me.
Right. And this zeroes in on specifically some vehicle access on a specific area of vehicle access of the campus.
On the emergency access easement.
Correct.
All right. And do you know how long that emergency access easement has been in existence?
I do not, although it was referred to in the previous hearing, apparently 50 years.
Okay. So you have no history of what the original easement was all about?
I
That's
have-
200 years old or something?
I have no idea what the history of that easement.
Now, you indicated that the access from the emergency access easement is somehow problematic because it could allow, unsavory folks and unrestricted access by the public and whatnot. Is that correct?
Among other things.
Well, that you realize that easement has been gated by Benchmark for a number of years off of 252. You're not?
Well, I know there's a gate at the entrance to the easement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so,
mean, I don't know how long it's been there, but I know it's there.
okay. With the gate in place, would you agree with me that you're not going to get usage of that easement unless somebody opens the gate?
You're not gonna get usage, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, would you agree with me that that you're not going to have free access into the Benchmark vis-a-vis the gate at the emergency access easement unless somebody has a key or like a first responder?
I would not agree with that because it's not secure.
Okay. Can I go up there and open the gate?
Yes,
It's not secured, it's not locked.
it's not. No, I don't know about, as we speak today, when I did my assessment, it was not.
Okay. Are you aware of the agreements that have been reached about providing a secure gate there and also a chain on the side of Damview Road, thereby restricting access to anybody except first responders?
No.
Now, you're also aware that the November 15th plan proposed bollards to, we've got the perimeter access issue addressed. Let's go inside. You said you're concerned about, traffic going up and down near the children there. Do you know of any incident in the last 50 years where a child was struck or hit by any car using that easement?
I know of no incident. I know of no history of use of the easement.
Did you check with the Upper Providence Police Department to see if there was any incident of that nature?
I did not know. I don't need to check with the police department to know the potential for incidents on an easement that goes directly through the center of campus.
Okay. So you didn't check with anybody as to what the history was of incidents or degree of traffic or anything like that?
No, I just spoke with administration about the degree of traffic through there, sure.
And when you say administration, who would that be?
Mr. Hancock.
Okay. Now, are you aware that I believe Mr. Hoopman on cross-examination, when I was crossing him, I asked him about future construction on the Bradley property. Are you aware of the Bradley property which was recently acquired?
Yeah, the home or the house.
And the Bradley boundary on the interior abuts the emergency access easement line on I believe the eastern side of the easement. Is that correct?
There's, and without looking at the map, I believe there's a driveway leading from the easement to the property or to the house.
And I believe that when I was questioning Mr. Hoopman, he indicated, hey, we can't build across that access. Were you there for that cross?
I don't recall that specifically. I may have been.
And would you agree with me that if that easement was relocated as originally proposed but since withdrawn by Benchmark, with the easement gone, a building could go across that easement?
I can't testify to that.
Okay. And again, the easement is addressed by the collapsible bollards and the gate. The gates and the chain for the outside accessibility, the bollards for internal use. And if it's not accessible from the exterior, who would control the use on the interior?
I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Who would have the control of the use of the interior if the emergency gate is locked and secured for first responders use only? Do you understand the question, Mr. Cross?
Well, not entirely. I mean, the bollards are collapsed. The bollards are.
Would you agree with me that Benchmark has a say on how the interior is used?
Well, sure. I mean,
Okay.
they have the say on how the whole campus is accessed, sure.
And again, you're not aware of the degree or extent and by whom that easement has been used in the past 50 years.
All I was told is that it hasn't been used by emergency vehicles in some time. That's what I was told.
All right, and that were you told who has been using it?
Other than like delivery vehicles and
And
things.
these are
that-
benchmark folks, right? The benchmark
I
deliveries?
don't know that. I don't know.
Well, UPS, you can tell them how to get to a place, could you not?
I'm sorry, Vince, I don't understand.
I don't know the vehicles that are using it now.
I'm just saying benchmark can direct people delivering to them on how to go there, could they not?
They can direct people, sure.
Now, again, your report is primarily directed to what I think is a moot issue of the access easement, because it is there. But you do raise some interesting questions about unauthorized access and criminal activity. And things of that nature, and everything from vandalism to kidnapping of a child and even shootings. So I was just interested in why just the easement was focused on, since the access is restricted externally and internally with the bollards and externally with the gates and the chain. And the main access gate or the main access, does that have a security entrance, gates or anything like that?
No.
Nobody watches it,
That I can't.
monitors it?
I'm sure it's monitored.
are unfenced or unsecured, does that pose an issue? With frontage on streets and not putting up a fence or some other monitoring device or something to, you know, keep the school aware.
There again, it's a balance of how open you want your campus to be and how inviting to the community, those kind of things. I mean,
I'm
most
sorry, I
schools,
can't hear you. Can you repeat?
I'm saying most schools aren't fenced off, their campuses aren't fenced off, for the most part. You'll find that in urban settings more than anywhere else. You know, it's a fine balance on how open you want your campus to be in the community.
So if the school borders on a public street, and it's a secluded public street, and it provides direct access to property either at night or during the day, you have no problems with that.
I didn't say that.
Okay, well, let me ask you something more precise. There is, Benchmark has frontage on Danview Road, right where the soccer field is. Very well, you know, and kids play there all the time. And it falls right down to Danview Road. And there's no gates, just a simple accessibility onto the field. Would it be prudent to put a fence at that location to fence off that soccer field along the roadway to perhaps the corner of the property, which is to the end of the, you know, the end of that old cul-de-sac that was broken through? Do you know where that is?
I walked the campus, so I have a rough idea what you're talking about.
Did you walk Danview Road?
I drove Danview Road, yeah.
Are you familiar with the area I'm talking about?
I believe so, yeah.
Would that be a good place to put a fence to protect the kids, especially when they're playing on the soccer field? I mean, they're right next to the public roadway there.
If there's, you know, concern, there's specific issues, I mean, I recommend fencing around, on many campuses, fencing around athletic areas and playgrounds and those kind of things. Again, primarily, in particular instances where they're adjacent to like travel lanes or parking areas or roadways and those kind of things.
I'm sorry, I sort of lose you every once in a while when you drop your voice. Could you please try to keep it up?
Sure.
And I'll turn your attention to another section of the of Benchmark fronting on Danview Road. Former lots 18 and 16 border Danview Road, and those lots are being used as play fields for children, right next to a public road. Would that be advisable to fence in and restrict access?
Any playground, athletic area or anything like that, on any campus that I go to, if the vehicles have unrestricted access to that space, so many elementary schools.
No, I'm not saying vehicles have access to that space. A vehicle could simply park on Danview Road. Somebody could jump out of there and just grab or do harm to any of the children up there. Would that area warrant placing a fence on there?
No, I'd have to look at it again. I don't know.
Okay. Now, these are playgrounds that front on a public street. They don't cause you as much concern as a restricted easement within the heart of the campus where all kinds of illegal things can occur.
Unless you fence off the entire campus, you know, if you're just fencing off a portion of it.
Well, no, I'm not saying fencing off the entire campus. I'm just saying fencing off those areas that front on Danview Road where children are constantly playing. And that, as a security expert, causes you uncertain concern.
Not necessarily, no.
No. Okay, does it warrant any concern?
I would have to, I would have to go look at it. I'd have to discuss with administration if there's issues, what the neighborhood of Danby Road is like, so forth and so on. I mean, campuses everywhere, playgrounds and so forth have people have access to. Anybody can go and kidnap a child at any time, sure.
Okay. Well, perhaps I can save you the trouble of talking to Mr. Hancock, because we've already asked for fencing along those areas and it's been refused.
Objection, no.
Well, we can check the record.
I mean, I don't think there was a question there, so let's move on.
Anyway, you don't have any clear recommendation at this point in time.
I don't believe, I'd have to look at my report, sir, but I don't think in my report I made a recommendation of that nature.
And when you focused on the emergency access easement, did you have discussions with Mr. Hancock as to what their concerns were primarily?
Sure.
And he directed you to the emergency access easement, correct?
Well, among other things, sure.
Okay. Now, that was the only thing I could see in your report that was emphasized to any degree. And again, reducing access and activities on a private school of this nature, to not allow the general public to be in there, would that, as much as possible, would that be a prudent security, provision?
I think, well, that goes back again to my previous answer. It depends how open you want your campus to be and welcoming to the community.
I'm sure that you don't render opinions based on what a particular school wants it to be. You render it from a security standpoint, do you not?
Well, if I see a particular vulnerability, yes. Campuses vary from place to place. I mean, it all depends on the neighborhoods, what's in the vicinity, what the different threats are around the particular campus. So, fencing off, as I said before, most of the only campuses you'll find that are completely fenced are in urban areas. Very rarely do you see a completely fenced campus in suburban or rural areas.
Excuse me, Mr. Krause, I did not say completely fenced. I
You
said,
said about keeping people off the property.
no, I'm not talking, I'm talking about inviting people from the general public onto the property. And I'll give you an event, some examples. Would it be prudent to be renting out a gym for multiple tournaments that doesn't even involve your school?
I'm not gonna comment on whether it's prudent or not. I would comment on what security measures you should have in place if you do that.
And what would those be?
To have it staffed properly, have agreements in place that for the use of the facility, where people can go, where they can, where they can't go, where they can park, and so forth and so on.
And the same would be if you invited or you rented out an auditorium for a public theater function by an independent performing arts entity. Would that be correct?
That's what we're talking about, correct?
But would you agree with me that allowing a lot of people that are unaffiliated with the school into a school setting does affect security to one degree or another?
Sure.
Okay. I have no further questions of this witness.
Just briefly. Good afternoon, sir. Teresa Murtaugh. I just wanted to be clear. You mentioned during your cross-examination, your opinion of potential incidents on the property. So I just, looking at it factually, wanted to confirm your testimony that there have been no reported incidents ever of any authorized or unauthorized user entering the school property during school hours where children have been kidnapped, injured, or have been in contact with someone that they do not know. Is that a correct statement?
I can't answer that. To my knowledge, yes.
You mentioned during cross-examination, you did some investigation. So during your investigation to testify and prepare your report, we can agree that you found no reported incidents of what I mentioned,
I found no reported incidents in the recent past.
and you're the expert. You testified, you did your investigation, you found no reports. You can agree on that, right?
It's my understanding the school's been around, has existed since roughly 1970. What I looked into didn't go back that far, so I can't testify to anything beyond, the recent past.
Well, when you say recent past, that's pretty broad.
Maybe the last 20 years.
So in the last 20 years, you can agree that there's been no reported incidents of youth authorized or unauthorized users entering the school property during school hours for kidnapping, injury a child, or coming in contact with a child in the past 20 years.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a short redirect questions. Mr. Kraus, with regard to the emergency access easement, you talked in your testimony about bollards, but your report also makes some other recommendations with regard to other measures that could be put in place along that easement, because that was a principal area of your concern, at least addressed in your report, is that right?
That's correct.
And what are some of the other measures, security measures that were suggested over and above the issue of controlling the physical access on the emergency access easement?
Some of the other things that I included in the report were the number of increased traffic control devices, speed bumps, crosswalks, those kind of things. Also, enhancing camera surveillance, if that's possible, in those areas. Reducing the amount of foliage to increase sight lines and view, that the staff have better views of things. Not necessarily removing trees, but trimming them to a certain height that allows people to see a little more clearly, into those areas. Increasing lighting, to a point where not creating light pollution, keeping the lighting in a downward type direction, but at least increasing lighting a little bit. And most importantly, was educating the school community on the use of that particular, and this is before the bollards, but the use of the travel lanes, parking areas, the easement, that kind of thing. So educate them in the fact that there are children crossing between the main school building and the gymnasium and those kind of things.
All right, and you had indicated, I think both in your direct examination, also in cross-examination, that you've had discussions with Mr. Hancock with regard to his concerns, which would be voicing the school's concern regarding vehicular traffic, which currently goes over the emergency access easement. Is that right?
That's correct.
And one of the issues that at least was addressed in Mr. Hancock's direct examination was delivery vehicles that aren't necessarily delivery vehicles that the school has requested, but are going to Danview Drive residents and mistakenly going down that drive. Did you have discussions with Mr. Hancock about that issue?
We may have. I don't recall that specifically, but.
But did he express concern?
Jack, he's leading the witness, and there, as my recall, there was never any misdirected deliveries for Danview Drive going through Benchmark. My recollection was it's Benchmark's deliveries when they come on campus, they don't know which way to turn to get to a building, which is Benchmark's obligation to direct.
He said he doesn't recall.
So, Mr. Hancock, please don't speak. I do recall Mr. Hancock testifying about misdirected vehicles that were intended to go to Danview. But ultimately, he testified that he doesn't have a recollection of that. So can we please move on?
Sure, absolutely. And if that in fact was a concern, and these are delivery vehicles that are coming off campus and not necessarily being summoned by Benchmark for deliveries to Benchmark, would that be of a concern to you if there was free access over that emergency access easement?
Yes.
And are you aware, Now, Mr. Mancini had made reference to the gate that is at the head of where the emergency access easement comes and intersects with North Providence Road. You have indicated that that gate is closed but not locked, right?
That's, when I did my assessment, that was the case, yes.
Now, even if that gate was locked, is there other means of access to the emergency access easement via other entrances to the school that would be available?
Yeah, through the main vehicle entrance to the campus, sure.
And in your professional opinion, will the collapsible bollards that are being proposed, both at the front end and the back end of the emergency access easement, help in alleviating that unwanted vehicular traffic going across the easement?
I think they will, yeah.
And in terms of the issue of the fencing around the athletic fields, I believe your testimony was that you would recommend fencing around athletic field areas, but not necessarily with regard to putting a whole fence around the perimeter of the benchmark property, correct?
Yeah, that wasn't among my recommendations, no.
Now, if there were to be placed limited fencing along the athletic fields, the soccer field, and around the kickball fields, which are the lots 16 and 18 that Mr. Mancini was referencing on the north west side of the campus, if there were just segments of fence and not completely enclosing it, in your professional opinion, would that provide any assistance or no assistance or minimal assistance with regard to keeping unwanted people coming on the campus?
Well, minimal assistance, I guess. It depends on the type of fencing, height of the fencing. You know, with fencing, you have to decide what's the fencing for. Is it to keep kids from going off the field if they're young children, or is it to keep people from coming on? So.
And is it fair to say that this is a work in progress with the school? Have you finished your work with the school in terms of your final security assessments and discussions with the school?
So I've submitted a draft report. So the way this works is I complete a draft report, I submit it to the administration for review. And then we discuss it further. We have a meeting scheduled to discuss all the recommendations in the report.
And so all the additional issues you may have heard here tonight would also be potentially on the table for further discussion with the school?
Sure.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Does council have any questions for the witness? Is there any recross limited to the questions that were just asked on redirect?
Not for me.
Just a few. On the illumination, I believe your report said near buildings, is that correct?
Well, are you referring to the good lighting along the portion of emergency access near the building drive to enhance visibility in times of darkness? Yes, it did.
Educating the school community of the use of the EAE. Is that probably more important than externally, the entities like a UPS truck using it?
Well, with the bollards in place that are planned,
That will obviate the use period, right?
right, I mean, there's not gonna be used, so.
Okay, so that recommendation is really not necessary. And so F of your report would not have as much significance with the bollards in place. Eliminate trees and foliage along the path that obstruct natural sight line. I mean, you're talking about the access from Danview Drive all the way up to the hill on top of, coming up?
No, primarily in the vicinity of the school buildings.
Oh, okay, so you can see this. Enhanced surveillance that CCTVs. Is there currently any surveillance equipment on Benchmark?
I prefer not to answer that question.
Okay. No further questions.
No, thank you, Mr.
And then thank you for your testimony. Can you please call your next witness?
Yes, that would be Richard King. This is Brown Street Meet.
I have no issue with him.
If you hear, I don't have an issue.
Still going? Still go ahead.
Ken, is the Zoom still working on this?
According to my screen, and I haven't stopped the recording.
11 people can't just said they had.
Are they trying to join the general council meeting or are they trying to join the one that's posted under benchmark? Because I know that the benchmark link isn't working, the regular the special council meeting link is.
So what should they do?
Tell them to zoom in on the hearing.
If they would like to still get in, they have to go to the agenda center and click the special council Zoom link. And if not, we will have the recording to provide to them within a day or so.
Sorry for interrupting, it just kept blowing up. I will go in. Thank you.
Chris, is that image relevant?
No, I'll take you down. All right, yeah. Show up on screen with our connectivity we found out.
Was these provided in advance to the?
What was provided was what was requested, which was A47.
Well, that, we weren't aware of anything else being provided, but can we have 5 minutes to take a look at these?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Then can we take a 5-minute recess?
Yes.
Okay.
You okay to start, Maria? So you're gonna call Richard King.
Correct.
All right.
Ready to go.
And have you had time to review his CV? What are you gonna offer him as?
He's a licensed architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we'll be talking about the proposed interior improvements to the Bradley residence, as well as the minor improvements in emergency access easement in terms of the bollards that are being placed and the paver blocks that are being put down for the pedestrian walkway at that area.
So you're offering him as an expert in the field of architecture?
Yes, related to also in particular with regard to institutions, projects like of this nature.
All right, why don't you just give a real brief, get him to, talk about that, and do you have any objection to him being recognized as an expert in architecture?
So long as it's in the architectural fields, I don't have any objections, but I will, I have to see where he takes it.
Sure, Mr.
Yeah,
Freeman.
he's a licensed architect, no objection.
Ms. Murtaugh?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Okay,
So
so,
we'll go with qualifications.
yeah, just really quickly, put his qualifications on the record.
Mr. Kagan, and I want to make sure that he's been sworn.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm the testimony you guys are giving will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth to help you God? Yes.
It's on up.
Yes.
Now, Mr. King, I have projected in front of you exhibit 841, which is your CV, is that correct?
It is, yes.
Can you briefly go through your qualifications? You are a licensed architect with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I am a licensed architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the state of Delaware, the state of New Jersey, Washington DC, and Florida.
Okay, and can you briefly go through your background related to your experience in architecture related to projects such as what is being proposed by Benchmark?
Sure, I've worked for educational institutions over the course of my career, which began in the mid-90s. So I've been doing this a while, and done quite a bit of work doing campus planning for institutions as well as buildings, including the buildings that we're talking about this evening, similar types of projects.
So seeing as there's no objection to his being recognized as an expert in the field of architecture, council is going to do so. Can you please continue with your question?
Thank you. Mr. King, what's been your role with regard to this particular application?
We have worked with the civil engineer on site planning approaches, and we have looked at the existing house in terms of meeting requirements that it would have to meet to be used for the school's purposes.
And you understand that this application involves the proposed 5-year master plan by Benchmark for certain site improvements on campus.
Yes,
And I take it you've been out to the property,
yes,
and you've also been to the Bradley residence, which is now owned by Benchmark.
yes,
Have you viewed the interior of that residence?
I have.
Have you also walked and reviewed the campus itself and also the surrounding properties?
I have reviewed the campus itself. I have not looked at all of the surrounding properties in detail.
Okay. And what about the Bradley property, the 3 acres that is comprises the Bradley property?
Yes.
Now, what specific aspects of the Benchmark conditional use application and its 5-year master plan has your architectural firm been involved with?
We have worked with the civil engineer on the layout for the roads and parking. We have worked with them on lighting. We have worked with them on adjustments to the easement, including pedestrian paving in order to improve safety on campus, selection of the collapsible bollards. And we have also analyzed the interior of this existing house for new use.
Right. And before getting into the details of those elements of your involvement with this project, have you had the opportunity to review the governing ordinances of the township, including zoning and any building codes that would be applicable to this project?
Yes,
Have you also been guided by the input from the school, its board, and or Mr. Hancock?
Yes,
And based upon the work that you undertook and your investigation of the governing ordinances and your knowledge of the property as well as the input of the other consultants, do you believe that ultimately this project is something that would be compliant with all the underlying codes for the township?
I believe it would, yes.
Now, let's discuss in a little bit more detail the submission.
Excuse me, codes, may I have clarification on that, please?
Well, the township code is the zoning code as well as the township building code.
Correct.
All right, so let's focus on the campus upgrades. And were you worked with also the engineer, Mr. Hootman?
Yes,
So you're familiar with the emergency access easement issue and its incorporation into this campus, overall campus project, correct?
correct.
And I take it that since you've been out to the campus and walked the campus, that you also walked along that emergency access drive, correct?
Correct.
Now, the prior witness, we had presented the aerial view of the emergency access easement, and this is applicant's exhibit A39 that Mr. Kraus had testified to. Would you agree and confirm that where that red line is drawn on this plan, and indicated here, emergency access easement drive, that is the location of the emergency access easement that we're talking about?
It is.
And then there's a page 2 of that exhibit, which shows another aerial view where the emergency access easement runs through the campus area.
Correct.
So you confirm that that is the access easement that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Now, now I'm showing you applicant's exhibit A42. Can you identify what this exhibit depicts?
This exhibit depicts on the lower right-hand side, the existing emergency access easement, which is an asphalt paved surface.
Which is an
Asphalt paved surface.
Now, what's our orientation as we're looking at this photograph?
We're looking toward, I would say, the north end of the property, away from the parking lot.
And would this be at the front end of the campus?
Yes, this is closer to the parking lot.
All right. Now, can you describe what,
Excuse me, when you say Florida, are you looking north towards the reservoir?
Looking north toward the reservoir. Yes.
Okay. Now, can you describe what improvements are being proposed to the driveway of the easement?
The proposed changes to the driveway are limited to the point where it comes in contact with the parking lot. And the reason for that is to, because we are improving the parking lot in that area, and because that will be a heavily used pedestrian area, we want to change the materials on the ground so that those will be a paver, so that would just designate that is a safe kind of crossing zone and a safe area for folks, but also it will be it's a drop-off point in the morning and a pickup point in the afternoon. So we wanted to just be a little bit more gracious than the asphalt. So and that's also where the new bollards will be.
Okay. And is there any need for widening in that area?
We have to widen it because any area of the easement that we touch by code, we have to make it wider. Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
If any part of the easement that we change, like if we take up the asphalt and put in the pavers, we have to widen that section of the easement.
Now, do you have a plan that shows where the proposed paver blocks and widening are to occur?
Yes, of course. Very smooth, very smooth.
I'm trying to have a good segue.
He's been leading the whole time. That's okay.
Just for this.
It's all yes or no questions, it's not leading. Now, exhibit 43, A43, this is entitled Enlarged Proposed Campus Plan. Now, utilizing this plan, well, first off, let me ask you this. Did your company, which is WRT, prepare this plan
We did,
under your supervision?
yes.
Now, can you describe what this plan is depicting?
Sure, so the area diagonally through the plan, more toward the right-hand side is the existing easements. And you can see at the lower end of that in kind of autumn golds color is where we will have new pedestrian paving there. So that will be the nicer paving material mentioned. We've reconfigured a little bit this area to be more receptive to drop off, so there's more of a, what I'll call a lay-by area here so that other cars can get by, where you see the number 4. And you'll see there are 3 dots just above the number 4. Those will be the position of the bollards closest to the parking lot. And then if you go to the other end of the easement, I'll say the upper right corner of the drawing, there are bollards also there at where you see number 4. And those will all be the collapsible bollards that have been mentioned before.
And again, I think we heard Mr. Hooton testify to this, but I'd like your opinion as to why the use of the collapsible bollard.
Well, I think for obvious reasons, the school wants to limit the number of vehicles that can move through that section of the campus on a day-to-day basis, but still be allowed to have emergency vehicles go through there when they need to. And so the type of bollard is specifically designed so that an emergency vehicle can push through it. But it remains, because it is a visual barrier, it will prevent people from prevent trucks or whatever from going through there. There is at the where you see the number 4 in the yellow area there. There's also a depressed area, like a driveway entrance there as well, so that when the emergency vehicles come through, they can smoothly go through. There's no impediment to their movement through that space.
Now, do you have any documentation that provides a graphic as to what these bollards would look like and how they would function? Go to the applicant's exhibit A44.
Yeah. So this is the bollard, as you can find on the internet. This is probably the color that IKEA might select for this bollard. We'll probably use something a little more understated, maybe a bronze color or something like that. But it is, you could see at the bottom of the bollard, there's a hinge, and then there is a hasp within that hinge, so that when an emergency vehicle goes to move through it, it snaps the hasp in the hinge so that it will drop. And then allows it to get out of the way. That hasp will then have to be replaced each time someone breaks through it, but we expect that it won't happen that often. And it's really not a big deal to replace the piece. So it's probably the best bollard we've found that we've used at other schools for this type of application. It is not uncommon for this type of need on the school campus.
And you reviewed the product specifications, I'm certain.
We have.
Okay. Now, based upon the review and your understanding of this product design, what impact, if any, would you believe that this would have on the ability of an emergency access vehicle to traverse across the emergency access easement quickly and efficiently?
We don't have any concerns about it. We've seen it in use before and talked with the technical representatives from the manufacturer, and we're confident that this would be an appropriate bollard for this application.
Now, do you have a rendered plan that you could show council that would show and give council a better idea of what the improvements would look like at the front part of this campus where you were just testified to?
Yes.
So let me show you what's been marked as applicant's exhibit A45. Is this been also prepared by your
Yes.
firm? Can you describe what we're looking at?
Yes. So I apologize, the view on the screen is a little blown out. You can see one in the center of the image, 1, 2, 3 bollards here, and the easement you can see behind that. The pavers I mentioned, you can see here in the foreground, and just past bollards are, a nicer quality paver just to improve that drop off and pedestrian experience. And then you can see also there's a depression here for a driveway so that emergency vehicles could easily traverse that and just move very directly and easily through the easements, down the easement path.
And this would be essentially the same view that we saw on the other exhibit, A42, the photograph, but maybe step back.
It's step back. The photograph is taken, we have this right about where the bollards are now, so it's further up.
Now, Mr. Hoopman, when he testified, also talked about improvements to the interior sidewalks of the campus over the next 5 years. And we had presented in exhibit A19. Let me see if I can pull that up. This was a rendered plan of the interior sidewalk improvements. Was this plan prepared by your firm?
It was.
And utilizing this plan, can you highlight what improvements are being proposed in terms of new sidewalks and in particular lighting issues associated with those sidewalks?
Well, this image doesn't really talk too much about, doesn't illustrate lighting. It really is illustrating where new sidewalks would be.
Object to the use of lighting on a site. That has been addressed by the engineer. The architects usually do not get involved in this.
Well, but the architect can talk about what type of lighting is being proposed, whether it's the architectural design of the
Okay,
lighting.
I'm going to talk about the type.
We good to go?
Yep.
Okay. So the areas you see, the lines around the plant in pink, those are the areas where there will be new sidewalks placed. Some of the criteria for where they're being placed is really, one, to ensure that we have consistent pedestrian pathways that are separated from vehicular pathways. We're also looking to provide some better pathways through from different parts of the school buildings to, say, the gymnasium. There's some requiring maintenance. And then there are new pathways on the Bradley property connecting from the main quad of the school over to the 2 Bradley property buildings, and then around the edges of the new drive access that would go toward the back of the property and around the little parking lot between the carriage house and the existing house.
In your opinion, is there adequate existing pedestrian access across campus?
Not really, that's why we're adding a few more in the middle, a few more pathways in the middle. This also just improves reduces the opportunities that students have to potentially walk in driveways and parking lots, which we're trying to reduce, just for obvious safety reasons.
And in terms of lighting, what is proposed with lighting along these internal sidewalks?
We haven't designed the lighting yet along the internal sidewalks. Internal sidewalks are often lit with a bollard system or with shorter overhead lights. So we have not designed those. We've designed and laid out the lighting for the perimeter roads, the new drive, but we have not for the path, the internal paths yet.
And if you were to use a bollard type design, what would that look like?
Bollards are typically 3 to 4 feet high, and they generally are shining light down. So bollards have a really short throw, what we would say in the lighting world. So like a bollard, for instance, might throw light 5 or 6 feet in diameter around it, and it all throws it down on the ground. So it's really meant for pedestrian scale lighting. So which is appropriate. We want to reduce the amount of light pollution up into the sky across the campus as much as possible. We try to use those on pedestrian scale lights and try to limit the number of taller lights we use to areas that are more challenging and wider, like parking lots and new driveways.
And with these, would you anticipate these lights on the sidewalks to be on all night or only when they would be in use?
They only need to be on when they're in use, and then we'll set them on timers for the appropriate time based on the time of year and when there's activity on the campus.
Now, you also mentioned that you were involved in doing some of the lighting design for the parking areas.
Correct.
Mr. Hooton testified to an outdoor lighting plan, which is applicant's exhibit A28. And was this exhibit also prepared by your firm?
It was, yes.
So you've seen this before, obviously.
I have.
And I know that Mr. Hooton testified extensively regarding the lighting photometric information that's on this plan. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but I would direct your attention to the upper right-hand corner of the exhibit. And there's a proposed light standard, which is shown on this exhibit. Can you discuss what consideration has been given to the architectural design of the lighting for the parking areas?
Well, the number one thing that we're looking for with a light fixture in this type of situation is the cutoff for the fixture, because nobody wants to see, right, we want the light on the ground, but not up in the sky. We all get annoyed by light that's up at the head of the lamp itself. So we really want to, and so this option, you cannot see it in the photo, but it has a ring that gets installed on it that will cut the view of the lamp itself, so that it's pointing all the light down. And obviously, Gus testified to the photometrics, which you see below it. So it does have a pretty tight range. So our goal is to try and is for the light to be on the drive surfaces in the parking lots primarily. So that type of fixture allows us to make that happen. We've also picked a light that is relatively small in scale. Because we have a lot of trees in these areas, something that's, like a bronze color that will blend in, just reduces visual presence as much as possible.
And about how tall are we talking about these standards?
I'd have to double check the height of these. They're often 12, 16 feet is usually the range of them.
And these would be LED?
They're usually LED, yeah.
Does LED come in different intensities as well as different color temperatures?
It does, yeah. So we would eventually select the color temperature so that we don't have a glaring light, right? If you use a light that's too white, which has a really high color temperature, that can and if it has too much intensity and no cutoff shade, it can be pretty intense and glaring. So we want to obviously try and get that the number of lumens down as much as possible without losing the spread of light across the ground. But also we can change the color temperature so it has a warmer, I'm not sure friendly is the right word, but more friendly feeling light.
Now, let's turn to the Bradley residence and the proposed use by the school for that residence and what your firm has been engaged for that purpose. First off, let me show you applicant's exhibit A46. And this is entitled Aerial View of the Bradley House. Based upon your knowledge of the campus and your inspection of the residence, in your opinion, is that an accurate view of the Bradley House?
It is.
And what's our orientation here?
Well, you can see we have the north arrow in the lower right corner pointing toward where you see the soccer field is in that area. And then in the distance, just kind of, I'll say, upper center of the image, you can see the existing, through the trees, see the existing buildings for the school. And then right almost in the center of the image is the new house. So we're kind of looking, I guess, kind of south and west.
All right, and where that north arrow is, what's up in that?
That is the soccer field.
And so that would make this the east elevation that we're looking at?
That faces Danby Drive.
What are these large white?
Those are the biggest columns I've ever seen on a house that small. They're impressive.
All right, and it's fairly large house?
It is a large house. It's between 4,500 and 5,000 square feet.
And do you have any idea about the age of the house or any other information regarding?
The information we've seen puts it early 1900s.
To your knowledge, is the Bradley House listed on any sort of historic registry, whether at the local level or at a federal level?
We haven't seen it. No, we haven't found any records to that effect.
So it's not on any national historic list or anything like that?
No, it's unlikely that would be meaningful because the National Historic Register would only affect if there were any federal money that would be put into the project, and then that would affect what you could or couldn't do to the house. The local register would usually has more effect, but no, we did not find evidence on either register for the house.
Now, what is proposed for the house by the school?
Right now, the major things we have looked at are internal to the house. And we've looked at the first floor and the second floor, for use for some meeting space and some offices. And it could be that, sorry, space and offices.
Can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, sure. We've looked at the first and second floor, and looked at it for use of meeting space and some office space. And we've looked at adding, accommodations for accessibility on the ground floor, including a new accessible bathroom.
Now, you have some floor plans that would show this.
Yes.
All right, now present you before your applicants exhibit A47. This is a two-part exhibit, first floor plan and a second floor plan. So if you would, if you could go through this with council, over on the left-hand side looks like the existing floor plan.
Correct.
And what is being proposed by Benchmark.
So you'll see the what's called the family room, which is on the large room on the lower left part of the plan. There is a staircase on the right-hand side. That staircase goes up and then turns down toward the bottom or the front of the house. So there's an existing half bathroom there, which is underneath the staircase. We have studied the possibility, which you'll see in the next drawing over to the right, of putting an accessible restroom in that location under the stairs. We are still studying that. We're looking at an alternative location that is also in the kitchen, just to the right of the staircase that you see in the kitchen in the upper right. And the reason for that is there's a lot of, the family room has a lot of character. Beautiful space, beautiful woodwork, and the staircase is really lovely. And we're just concerned that that might compromise the character of that room. So we're looking at putting it off of the kitchen in order to reduce the impact on the existing fabric of the building.
And so as I understand then, based upon this floor plan, that would be the only bathroom at this level?
Correct. Yep. Well, there's the powder room would probably still be there. We'd probably leave the powder room if we didn't. We'd put the accessible restroom underneath there.
And let's go to the second floor plan.
So the second floor plan has fewer changes. We are looking at ways to integrate some office space. So you'll see that's in two places. The main body of the plan, the kind of vertical rectangle at the left side of it. You'll see in the proposed plan, on the top part of that plan, you'll see 3 offices across the top. Those would replace the existing master bedroom and master bath. And then at the lower part of that plan, you'll see there are 2 offices shown, which is dividing up a large front corner bedroom into those two office spaces. And then I believe those are the main changes with walls. Obviously, the other things are just defining uses like calling a bedroom an office. And then we have one large middle bedroom on the left middle side of the plan, which would be a conference room.
And is there a third floor on this?
There is a third floor. We haven't looked yet at what would happen on the third floor, but we're assuming it would be a similar supportive use related to the other uses in the building and would be, obviously compliant with the uses that are allowed based on the rest of the campus, whatever is on the rest of the campus.
This is what's currently proposed right now with this application, okay. Any expansion proposed to the exterior of this building?
We're trying very hard not to do that. The building has a nice character. And obviously to try to keep the costs in line and not, and just reduce the impact on the building and try and keep it.
I'm sorry, just
as possible. Reduce the impact on the building and maintain its character as much as possible.
Now, based upon the proposed use for office, first off, meeting area on the first floor, office on the second floor. Have you done any calculation of occupancy limitations? And let's take it by floor.
Sure. The occupancy limitation on the first floor is around 75 people. And that's mostly given the size of the dining room and the family room. They're quite large spaces.
And how is that determined? Are there specific code requirements for that?
So, because those are nice wide open rooms, they're not appropriate really for office space. And they have a really nice character with wainscot, et cetera. So, filling up with office cubicles seems inappropriate. So keeping them as open space that could be used for receptions and meetings seem like a more appropriate use. Well, how would we calculate that? We would calculate that based on what would be a small assembly use, like a meeting. And there's a requirement, there's a max, you would calculate that based on 15 square feet per person. So that would be, it's around 35 to 45 people in the family room and a little bit smaller amount in the dining room.
And what about on second floor? Is there some determination of occupancy as to how many offices you can have, or is it just more a matter of functionality?
A lot of it is the way the offices are divided here is trying to maintain as much of the existing as possible. So when we calculate the maximum number of people you can have for office space, the calculation is a little bit different. It's 100 net square feet per person. But it's really also about how many people are in these offices. So we anticipate there's 10 to 15 people on that floor, depending on how many people go in the office. That's probably 10 to 15 people.
Now, speaking as an architect, is this type of building, a large older residential building, something that would work well with an institutional use for an adaptive reuse?
It's very common. So for instance, I'm working with 2 other schools right now who have buildings like this and use them for various offices or a swing space, but the size of the building is appropriate and allows that to happen. Like offices, these are very big offices, so so I think it's pretty gracious. I would love an office that size, but so I think it's a completely appropriate use. Yeah.
And in terms of building codes, what sort of renovations would be needed to be made and issues to make sure that you were able to do this adaptive reuse?
So for what we've looked at for the first 2 floors, there's not a ton that we would need to do relative to changes to the layout. We'd have to, as we get into more detail, we would be looking at, issues around, we have to add fire alarms, things like that, and so we get into that level of detail. Lighting, electric would have to be upgraded. of course, and then the accessibility on the ground floor. There's enough other office space across the campus that we wouldn't necessarily have to upgrade, for instance, put in an elevator, because there's enough other office space on campus where they could put somebody if they had a disability. But because of the public use on the ground level, we really need an accessible bathroom on the ground floor.
And that would be in accordance with the ADA requirements, Americans with Disability Act.
It's ADA and ANSI both apply. There are two slightly different versions of accessibility codes, yep.
And to your knowledge, in order to do these renovations, is even an additional application process required of the township, further permitting that would be required?
Of course, for the building permit, yeah, as long as we're inside the building, it would just be a building permit, yeah.
And based upon your review of the building and your knowledge of the codes, both the federal codes and also the township codes that are applicable with regard to this type of project, you believe that this project can be made compliant with those codes?
Yep, absolutely.
I have no further questions of Mr. King.
Who wants to go first?
Mr. King, I'm a numbers guy, so I'm just looking at your calculation. You said 75 people would be the occupancy for the first floor.
About, yeah.
Would that be for both the family room and the dining room?
Correct.
Okay, because I'm just doing this quickly, and I'm having a hell of a time seeing, is that 19 feet 4 inches by 33 6 inches for the dining room?
I can't see either, it's pretty small.
It's 19 by 33.
So when I do the numbers real quick, I come up with about 646 square feet for the family room. And you said it should be 15 square foot per person for occupancy?
That's how we do the calculation.
Okay, so I come up with 43 in the family room. Now I'm sorry, in the dining room. When I go to the family room, again, I'm seeing 33.6, so 33 and a half times 33 feet 4 inches, 33.3, let's say. I get 1,115 square feet. And when I divide by 15, I come up with 74.37 just for the family room.
Yeah,
So when I add those together, I come up with about 117, not 75.
I hear you. So the way the rooms are calculated is not because they have circulation pass through them. Circulation path areas generally aren't counted because you can't really use them for those types of functions. So I hear what you're saying, but it actually isn't those aren't the dimensions we use for calculating the area that's occupiable within the space.
So there's some amount of that square footage that you deduct
Correct.
for what you.
Because there's no hallway, for instance, right? If you have a hallway, you wouldn't include the hallway. Like say you had a classroom building, you have a hallway and a classroom, you count the whole classroom, but not the hallway, because no one's actually technically occupying the hallway from an egress calculation standpoint. So when you have a building that doesn't have hallways, you don't calculate it at all.
So you deduct about, I mean, the way I look at it, if you're just using 75 as your number, that's if you use that total dimension. So you're deducting the entire amount of the dining room as circulation path, equivalent square feet.
I'd have to go back and double check. You're getting very precise and I don't have the diagram to represent. I apologize, I don't have to represent that number. But I can go double check that, I can.
Yeah, is there, have you developed those or were those made available in any way? How do you arrive at those numbers?
We have not, but those are numbers we do all the time and I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, well, just one of the concerns that the neighbors have is the amount of people that building will occupy.
Sure.
So that calculation, again, I just did it quick and you're giving me the explanation for why your 75 is different. That seems like an enormous amount of circulation path area deducted
Well, we're happy to provide that information.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing it. Thank you. Yeah, now, you mentioned that you are familiar with all the ordinances that are applicable.
I am familiar with applicable ordinances. I don't memorize ordinances, but I'm familiar.
Okay. Are you familiar with the conditional use ordinance?
I can't recite it off the top of my head, no.
Okay, so you can't recite it, but are you familiar with it?
What? If you have a question, I'm gonna try and answer it. I am familiar with it, yes.
Okay, so you're familiar that you're aware this is a conditional use
I
application,
am,
right?
yes.
So among the considerations that council has to make and that the applicant is supposed to supply is reduction of impacts, off-site impacts, including noise, lights, traffic, stormwater. You're aware of that, right?
Yes.
And you're aware that as part of that conditional use ordinance, that the purpose is to reduce the abrasion found at the edge by the use of large separation distances and buffers, right?
Yes.
And the concern is that you have this interface between a non-residential use property with residential.
Yes.
Right. And you would agree with me that council is entitled to impose conditions that are over and above the minimum required by other ordinances, right?
I'm aware that that is something that they could do, yes.
I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, your testimony was longer than we were led to believe it was going to be, but
My wife complains about that as well.
so is mine. All these renderings that you had, the plans, you said you work with the engineer. Actually, the renderings are not the floor plans. I'm talking about the site, other site plans, sidewalks, lights, and all that stuff. All those renderings were taken off of the engineered plans, correct?
It's a back and forth. So we draw something, they incorporate it, we take it back, we tweak it, say, how about this? It's a back and forth.
You handle the design concept, but the engineer's got to make it technically work.
Again, it's both, yeah. There's different aspects that we make technically work and parts they make technically work.
But you don't, for example, with lights, you don't design photoelectric drops and plans and, you know,
What do you mean?
what the heck do you call those things? The photo electric.
You mean the photometrics?
Photometrics, I'm sorry.
Design them? No, it's really just.
Calculate them? No.
All you do is the photometric exists and comes from the lighting company. And then you space them out according to the information
But
provided.
I mean, the spacing is provided in the plan, the photometric plan is provided by the civil engineer, is that correct?
We work
Or
with them on
somebody-
everything, yes.
Or somebody more skilled than that who knows something about lighting.
We work with them on everything, yeah.
Okay.
So,
You indicated that there's a proposed widening of the emergency access easement where there is, you're creating, I think you said a paver crossing or
Yes.
and dropping off.
Switch to that?
Yeah, that'll work.
Yes, it's the yellow area that you see on the plan.
Right, so that yellow area there, is this where it's going to be?
Correct.
And the widening at that level is basically, that's the only place that it's gonna be wide.
Correct.
And it's necessary, you're saying it's necessary because you're providing the pavers and you're ripping out the blacktop and it's gotta be widened to a chord, the crossing on these pavers.
The widening is required because, the township requires any renovation or change to that existing width.
I got
It
it.
has to be adjusted if you change any part of the easement.
Can you cite me to what code that relates to?
There was testimony from Mr.
On this, I'm asking you, this man is familiar with the ordinances, it's his plan.
I cannot cite the exact part.
Okay, so thank you. But it's necessary in your mind to accommodate the nicer paving to the sidewalk and.
Well, those are to make it a welcoming place, right, because it's a campus.
I got it.
Let's see.
The bollards, I just wanna, I'm not quite, I thought that the bollards were going to work in a particular way, that it was meant to be knocked down primarily by emergency access vehicles. You seem to indicate that these things can be knocked down by the internal users as well. That is the yes, or
If you can push a car through the bollards, that is correct.
okay, could you give me an example of why and when they would do that?
Oh, no, I'm a little confused by what you're saying, but the bollard is primarily a visual deterrent, and if you bump it, it's not gonna fall over. You've got to hit it at a decent rate of speed, but if you hit it at 2 miles an hour, you're probably not gonna knock it over.
Okay.
You have to be going, let's say, 10 to 15 miles an hour, which is, or faster, in order to knock it over.
Okay, in other words, these things are not designed to accommodate internal use without some consequence to the car or to.
I don't think there's much consequence to the car. There might be a small scratch or something maybe, but it's really a deterrent. It's, in order to make the easement work for the emergency vehicles, you need to give up a little bit of
I
the
understand.
oomph behind the bollard to make that happen without it being something where the person has to get out of their car and unlock it, which we obviously don't want in this situation.
But it's not designed for casual knockover to,
No, I don't think the middle schoolers would be having fun with it or something. I don't know.
On A45, did you indicate that there was, if you could have A45? You indicated that there was some curve or something that emergency vehicles could easily get over, or?
Well, it drops down like a driveway does. That was all I was trying to say, so that there's no impediment. It's not like a regular curve, it's eased so that, just like a regular driveway, so that they could easily mount it. It's not like they have to bump over a curb.
So there's no elevation from the roadway, significant elevation from the roadway elevation for emergency vehicles when they, if they have to come through.
There's an elevation change, but it's sloped, so that they can easily get up it.
Like a speed bump,
Like a driveway,
excuse me?
like a driveway. Like your driveway, most people's driveways, if there's a sidewalk and you have a driveway, there's a depression that happens, a curb cut that happens, so that you can go up that.
Well, I don't have a driveway, I just have a curb cut, and up I go, there's no depression, but you're saying an emergency vehicle can
Correct.
get through there.
Correct, yeah.
You indicated that the sidewalks were gonna be lit by bollard lighting.
Yes,
Have you ever seen bollard lighting used also in parking lots?
not well, no.
How about where you have a sensitivity of an institutional parking lot use, for example, being in close proximity to a residential?
No.
No.
Well, yeah, and the problem is you just can't have enough of them. You have to put them like in the middle of the drive aisle to get the light levels high enough to meet code requirements. So that's the issue, is they're just not set up to perform that
Could you
way.
tell me what, where the code requirements are for light intensity?
Not off the top of my head, no, I can't.
Excuse me?
No, I cannot tell you off the top of my head where that is.
Okay.
But I know Mr. Hoopman could tell you.
Let's see, now you indicated that, the 829 was a lighting plan and, their light fixtures would be directed to the ground and they would be cut off at appropriate time. Could you, I've been asking for the appropriate time that is somewhat fixed. Is there such a thing? Or is it just appropriate time to, according to benchmarks desires to operate at whatever hours they operate?
I think that would be an operational question that Benchmark would have to coordinate with everybody and themselves and how that schedule works, and I'm sure they want to balance those times with what they need and to minimize impact.
And I'll just add that Mr. Hancock's direct examination here, already committed to that, I recall.
It's in our application.
Yeah, and it's in the application as well.
So the system is designed.
If I had a clear fixed time, I wouldn't be asking it. I don't think Mr. Hancock addressed that.
It's in the application, in the master plan.
Well, the application isn't speaking to me right now. It's a witness who's discussed and addressed the lighting situation. I was hoping to get an answer from him, but.
So I designed it, I'm sorry you're disappointed. I designed a system, and the system has the capacity to adjust its time of day. And as I said, I suspect the exact times are something that the school would be willing to work out and balance the impact of what they need versus minimizing impact on neighbors. I think that's the most that anyone could ask for in this situation, but I appreciate your wanting to have an exact time.
I would appreciate if I could get a response and a commitment from Benchmark, but I haven't gotten that yet, but we're working on it. There are going to be, how many standards, could we have that site plan showing the illuminated, is that the lighting
That's it.
plan? Okay, this is the rendered lighting plan, correct?
Correct.
All right, could you tell me how many standards are between the soccer field and the Bradley House right here? Light standards.
I see there are, I think it looks like 5.
Okay, and is that for that was basically for this stretch here?
Correct.
And there are more light standards over here?
Correct.
And how many are over there?
You can see the yellow, I think it's I see there's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. And you say that there's only 5 over here on
It looks like there's 2 on each side. I'd have to double check whether what Gus,
There's 2 on each
Mr. has there is 2 or 1 with the 2 yellow parts, and whether they're double next to each other or not.
Is there 2 or is there 1 on each side?
As I said, I'd have to double check with Mr. Hoopman about whether each of the yellow dots represents 1 or 2, because he did the specific layout in the top.
I got you. Well, and then there are more standards along the side road, which is going to be, it's going to be very visible from Danview Road.
I don't think it's gonna be that visible from Danview Road, but I'm sure there are folks that will be able to see it who live on Danview Road.
Now, these are 20-foot high pole, standards poles with an LED fixture at the top, correct? You said that it's downcast.
Yeah.
And the last time, I think, Mr. Hoopman said, oh, it's 52, I think it's about 52 watts LEDs. Is that about?
I don't recall, but I'm sure Mr. Hoopman has that data.
Okay,
And
well,
that it's on there.
you said you designed the lights. How many watts LED watts are?
I said I worked with Mr. Hoopman on the design of the fixtures and the layout. Yep.
Well, assume that there are about 51, 52 watts per fixture. How does that translate to a fluorescent light bulb?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Well, LED lights are very efficient, and just on my research, it's 10 times brighter than their stated wattage for something like this. If that makes it like 500 watts per each fixture, am I in error on that?
I'm not sure of that, though I will say, going back to the question of LEDs can be more intense lights. They use a lot less energy.
Oh, I know they use less
I'm
energy.
just sorry, I'm just talking.
But the luminosity, they generate a lot more than the energy they use, and that's why people use them, because they're more efficient.
That's not a question, Mr.
If you could let me finish my answer, I'm happy to try and illuminate the situation as much as possible.
Oh, we'll be illuminated.
So, all LED fixtures are not the same wattage, right? So you pick the wattage that works for the need you have. There's a code requirement related to how much light we have to have on the driveways.
So you don't know where the code requirement is.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's a little bit antagonistic, frankly. Just because I don't memorize code requirements doesn't mean that I'm not being responsible.
I'm not saying you're irresponsible. I'm just saying I'd like to know the intensity of the illumination at this location along the side road and to the back, because it's going to impact and be viewable by a lot of residents.
Mr. Hoopman testified to that extensively. And that's on the site plans as well, which is part of
Okay,
it.
let me ask you something else. The site, I assume you reviewed Mr. Hoopman's illumination plan because you worked together and laid it all out together.
Yes.
I believe sheet 6, if I'm not mistaken, was the illumination plan. And it had the data for the fixture, and that's your bailiwick. I think you indicated that you select the fixtures and whatnot.
We preliminarily select the fixture, and then he verifies the fixture that we're using to make sure it works for the situation, yes.
Are these type of fixtures often used in commercial settings? For parking lots and the drive aisles and that kind of stuff?
Yes, that's why we're using them for driveways, because they're used for that type of application. That would
This
be
is not a commercial, this is not a commercial use, is it?
But that's a different question. The commercial use in the context of a light fixture. In the context of construction, commercial use means that you would use it at a school or an office building, or they're all the same in that context. So in that context, it is a commercial fixture. There's really no difference between the fixture one can select for a school versus a parking lot. You can pick a different fixture that's better suited to this type of application where you're trying to get lower levels of light and get most light on the ground. That would just be a better fixture. One wouldn't designate that as commercial or not. It's just a better fixture.
Since this is an institutional use, immediately abutting on R1 zone property, immediately abutting R1 developed residential dwellings. If you can't see the difference between that impact in a purely commercial setting.
Are you telling me that?
Objection.
Are you telling me I can't understand the difference?
He hasn't asked you a question.
My question is there a way to come up with more sensitive lighting in a situation like this than if it was just all commercial? With the residences in mind, keeping in mind that the property is zoned R1 on which benchmark exists.
I don't understand the question.
Is there lesser illumination that can be provided?
Is there?
Is there lesser illumination that can be provided because of this more sensitive interaction of uses? You're a planner. You say that you plan, is that correct? Provide land use plan?
Yes, I'm not a land use planner, I'm a
Okay.
campus planner.
All right, so you're a camp, so you'd have to, are you not designing not only for benchmark, but also to make certain that it does not impact abutting residences
Absolutely,
or near adjacent residences?
absolutely.
Okay, you indicated that there are different fixtures provided in the scheme, and not all the fixtures have the same illumination. Was that your
That's true.
testimony? Have you reviewed sheet 6 of Mr. Hootman's plan?
What I can tell you is the fixture that we selected is appropriate for the application and has the best cutoff that we can find that balances the need for the required light levels on the driveway while reducing the amount of spilled light into the air and to the side as possible. In addition, we've also included quite a bit of tall landscaping that would also help reduce that impact as well. Is it gonna completely remove the possibility that someone might see that fixture who's lower to the ground down the hill? Of course not, it can't. Unless we put a wall up between the fixture and the property line, that's not gonna happen. But we feel we've done a good job to find a fixture that gets as much cutoff as possible with the fixtures that are available across the country.
But what I'm saying to you is there's only one fixture with one output of luminosity at 51 point something or 52 watts, LED watts, that appear on the plan. There is no different, there's no lower wattage fixture. There's one fixture that's designated for all of those standards. Is that correct?
I don't remember, but I will also say this, you're not approving the wattage of that light fixture. You're approving a general approach to lighting, and then we have to come back when that gets done and look carefully at that, exactly what the fixture is, because you're not approving the light fixture.
Your plan.
You don't seem to understand me.
No, you don't seem to understand the approval process.
I do understand the approval process.
So if this council approves these plans, everything shown on those plans are technically approved. And then you have to figure out how to do it from an engineering
That is
standpoint.
not the entire picture. This plan also needs another approval. We can't go and build this tomorrow, right? And the requirements related to, right, if it got approved tonight, and there were drawings done for this, we couldn't build it tomorrow.
I have a little familiarity with that. Yes, I understand you have to go for land
Yes.
development and.
Yes, and those fixtures and the exact layout and the exact place of all those parking lines, et cetera, has to be detailed. That we're not there yet. That is the nature of the process. So from that perspective, yes, you do need another approval. That was the point I was trying to make.
But again, right now, plans show one fixture about 51.2 watts, LED watts, which translates, I think, to about 500 watts per fixture.
Objection, it's already been asked and answered, and we can go around and around.
I'll move on. I noticed that A48 was the wonderful drone view you had. Am I correct? Yeah. Am I correct that that view, the drone was probably close to the residents that are on Dam Road looking west?
Maybe.
Could be. Is there a view from the other side looking east towards Dam Road?
You seen that? I haven't seen it. No.
No, sorry. And that would have shown the residences that are close by, it would have shown Danview Road in reference to Benchmark's property, would it not?
Well, he testified that he's not aware of it.
Okay. Large house, 45,000 to 5,000 square feet. you've got first floor and second floor. I believe that Mr. Hancock, when he testifies that we were looking at the use of the third floor, is there a third floor on this?
There is. There's a couple bedrooms up there.
How many square feet up there?
Not sure.
Have you done any analysis of potential use of the third floor?
Not yet.
Is it likely to be done in the future?
Of course.
Okay, but not before it gets through this
It's
process.
just not there yet.
Okay,
It's, I
that's
mean,
fair.
it's likely to be similar use or something that supports those uses.
Well, do you
because-
have an idea of how many more people you can put on the third floor?
It depends on what the use is. If it's storage, nobody. You know, if
If
it's,
it's classrooms?
wouldn't put classrooms in there.
What can you put up there?
Probably put some offices.
Excuse me?
You could probably put some offices for storage, some of the most likely things. But we haven't looked at that yet. That's just a guess.
I got you. But you will be looking at it in the future.
At some point,
Um. Now, if my co-counsel's correct, and numerically I'll have to defer to him because he's better with numbers than I am. You could put about 115 people in there under strict code, if you wanted to follow the strict code. And is that accurate or not?
so could you say?
If you wanted to follow a strict code application, could you put more people in that first floor than 75 people?
Yes, it depends on what it is.
But
the
the
reason-
excluded for hallways, right?
No, it's a code doesn't work that way. The code is really, you have to understand your intent for the use, and then you do a calculation based on intent. There are other denser code requirements that you can use. But those wouldn't be appropriate for the intended use, right? So for instance, if you said, I'm gonna have a rock concert in there,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna have, that would be like 3 square feet per people, depending on, you know, the situation, but that's not the appropriate use. And so code can be, you're right, people have 150 people in their house, you know, do they fit? Mostly. So, you know, that's the case with any building.
How about not a rock concert, because I can't see the place as a Rolling Stones type setting. But how about, you know, a little more sophisticated, few cellos and violin and entertainment for prospective donors or what have you. You could
It's probably about what we've anticipated, yeah. Because there's 2 rooms, right? So if you're practical about it, and you're not trying to use the numbers to be argumentative, which, you know, we're in that kind of situation, so I get that. But you would probably use the family room for the concert, where you'd have them set up, and you'd have some tables and chairs, and then in the dining room, you'd probably have a reception and some food. So the reality is, you're not gonna use both rooms simultaneously, they're used together. One is gonna be used for the activity, and the other one's gonna be used for the kind of reception. So, you know, from a practical standpoint, that's kind of what you're talking about. So,
But you could get situations where you can put in more than 75 people in this area. Because frankly, I agree with my counsel. I don't see where you get that many I don't see any hallways, number one.
well, that's exactly the point.
Yeah, kind of fluid in the
You can't-
meter.
So if you do, well, obviously you're not an architect. So if you do a calculation for this room, it doesn't include the whole room. You don't include the space across here. You wouldn't include the space across there over to the back door or to that door. That's just a practical aspect of how the room works, right? And you have to be aware of that and make that part of the calculation. I don't know what to tell you. We did an honest calculation. We're not trying to manipulate the number.
Sir, are you aware that this house is connected to, which presumably when it was a residential house, was connected to the low pressure 3-inch line that serves the about 35, 36 people on Danview Road, the residences.
I can't really speak to the pipes below the ground. I would have to defer to Mr. Hoopman on pipes below the ground.
I'm sorry, keep your.
I would have to defer to Mr. Hoopman on his expertise related to pipes below the ground.
Do you have any idea when that sewer line was connected?
I have to defer to Mr. Hoopman for any pipes below the ground.
We're getting close to 10. How much longer do you have to go, you said?
I'm done, just one more question. No, actually, I'm done. Thank you so much.
Just briefly, could you bring, good afternoon, Mr. King, good evening. Could you bring up page 43?
843.
Where is Providence Road on that?
If you see the dashed black line on the far left and the white underneath it, that's where Providence goes.
That's Providence Road.
Yes,
Thank you.
my apologies, we should have written Providence Road there.
And keeping that up, addressing the fold down ballards, please. Will those bollards go both directions? If a car was going front to back, would it go down? And if the car was going back to front, would it go?
Yeah, I believe it can go both ways.
So if a car was, an ambulance or any vehicle was going whichever direction, the bollards would be
I believe so,
functional?
yes.
Did you check with the emergency access and first responders, like the chief of police here or the fire department? Are they acceptable to those gentlemen or to those departments? Did you have any contact with them?
Good question, I have to double check with Mr. Hoopman. Just seems some direct contact with them, they've confirmed as well.
I think there's testimony, Drew, you might not have been here that evening when Gus testified, but he contacted the fire marshal there.
And they're, thank you. So just addressing what Mr. Mancini was talking about with the lights. You talked about the lights and you wanted to minimize the effect on the neighbors and you don't want it to be too bothersome or bright. So the light bollards are pretty tall and spaced a certain way. Have you thought about spacing them closer so that we can make the light bollards smaller?
Well, the light bollards only come in certain sizes, so they're not custom, but
What's the smallest size it comes in?
usually about 3 feet high.
So have you thought about it? Put 3 feet, that would be pretty, it wouldn't be obtrusive like a 19-foot one or a 6-foot one or whatever.
Yeah,
Have
so
you thought about
it's-
bringing them closer?
Understood, so it's unlikely that the bollards, and I apologize, we haven't laid out bollards yet, as I mentioned. It's unlikely we're gonna be putting them around the outside the new drive around the outside of the Bradley residence and the carriage house. That's.
You're saying that they're not.
They're just gonna be internal to the
perimeter
campus.
road, they call that.
Correct,
It's
they're not gonna be on the perimeter, they're just internal to the campus, on the walking path, the new walking pathways in the center.
The lighting will be on the perimeter road then.
Those were the lights that, we were talking about, the taller
The
lights. that
giant
are
ones
drive-
that go down.
The taller ones, yeah,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Have you thought and done any studies on how this affects light pollution or effects on wildlife or anything like that? Have you done any of those studies?
No, we have not. We obviously want to, we are very committed to sustainability, reducing light pollution, so we're trying to find the best fixture possible because we don't want the light up in the sky either. And obviously that has impacts on migratory birds and things like that, as you're referring to. So we have a landscape group that looks a lot at the fixtures and the types of fixtures we use. And so we have a select group of fixtures that we've gone through and culled for, the best performance from those perspectives. And this fixture is among those.
When you say best, that's your opinion,
Of course,
but there are other light fixtures out there.
there's tons of other fixtures out there. Is there a better one we could find? We're happy to go look and see if there's more eventually as we get into design.
I think the neighbors would be happy if you found something.
Yes, we will, and yes, we will.
So in your discussions, have you been told by Benchmark or had any discussion on the use of the Bradley House for rentals? Have they said to you that we would never be renting out this building, so you don't have to worry about that?
Rentals, like what kind of rentals?
Well, they rent, just since you've asked, they rent out the auditorium, they rent out places on their campus
Oh,
for
I see.
strangers, for ballets, for basketball, for non-benchmark related. So have you had discussion on whether they would rent out the Bradley House?
No, we haven't had this.
So the discussion, you have had no discussion, so you don't know yes or no, if it will be rented out? In relation to that Bradley House, going back to what you're doing on the second floor, making all those offices, any reason you are keeping, since it is offices, why do we still need the tubs and showers?
Oh, those are coming out.
On your plan, they still remain.
So let me, you're right, the rear bathroom, we probably would be taking out the shower eventually. Yep. But we just haven't gotten there yet, so.
So is it definitely, all the showers and bathtubs
I
are
would
definitely?
think, we would probably just put a closet in there or something, you know, some sort of.
Is there a sprinkler requirement on Providence for this?
It depends on what we do. There's some situations where we might need it and some where we wouldn't.
Can you tell me what situations you would need it?
Not off the top of my head. The higher density uses, like if we had a mixed use, which we don't, you might need sprinklers, things like that. Meaning like a very different use in one area of the building versus another.
Just 1 second. Thank you, Mr. King. All right, I think that's all she wrote. Thank you very much.
Do any members of council have questions of this witness? Do you have any redirect?
One question. On the occupancy issue, Mr. King, I've seen where you go into a building and it says occupancy maximum and has a number and it says according to the fire marshal. Is it the fire marshal of the township that would have the ultimate say based upon what he understands it used to be in determining what the occupancy is?
It really depends on the township. Some places, if we do a full code plan and diagram out, once we're doing a full building design, that indicates the area that we're using, calculate. And then they would look at that, confirm it or not. And then it would be, the posting of it is really more the question. I haven't ever had somebody look at my documents and say, I don't believe you. But nobody has done that. That's okay, it's the first time. But sometimes it's posted, sometimes it's not, it really depends on the township.
Any recross on that one question?
Could I have just a quick? To what extent does the kitchen area enter into the occupancy calculation?
The kitchen area does have an occupancy, and it's likely to fall under the, I believe it falls under the office, so it's 100 net square feet per person, so it's pretty small, 3 or 4 or 5 people, something like that.
And is the footprint of the third floor the same as the footprint?
No, it's a lot smaller because it's in the roof, so they have these knee walls, as they call them, and there's not a lot of headroom up there. That's part of the challenge of the third floor, is there's not a lot of headroom.
Sure.
They have some places where there's dormers that make it a little bit better, but.
And you said there would need to be another approval, so you haven't gotten all the nitty-gritty details. But there would be another approval. In that approval process, would the neighbors have the opportunity to have input?
I think that's a question for Mr. Hancock and how that, there isn't, I don't believe that there is a formal process that we would need to go through, but, you know, whether, when is the
apply
wants
for
to
the
engage
permit,
on that.
right? But there's
Yes.
not this opportunity where the neighbors would have the opportunity to have input on that particular lighting plan. Am I right?
The lighting plan for outside or inside?
I'm not worried about the inside. I'm
Oh, I
talking
thought
about,
we were still on the inside, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the lights, the standards that are 16 or 20 feet tall that go on the perimeter road that is the main concern that the neighbors have. My understanding was that there would, you said there would be another approval after this before that would be,
I think we have to go.
Are we talking about
Land
for the internal?
the pathways.
Oh, yeah, that's land development.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the lighting, that would be the land development application.
So that has to go back through.
If we're talking about inside the house,
I'm not talking about inside.
all right, so the lights would be land development.
So yes, it has to go through land development. This is, yeah.
So there would be a similar hearing like this where we would be able to see what's proposed for that lighting and have input on it as neighbors.
Well, it'd be a public meeting. It's not a noticed hearing, unless township council, there is allowance under the NPC to have land development as a hearing process as well.
Right. So
But it would be a public meeting.
this process that we're going through now is different than that process.
It could be depending upon what council would.
And well, I would also say that, knowing, I can't speak for Mr. Hancock, but my intuition is that he'd be interested in making sure there was an opportunity for input. And I suspect that others here might want to make sure that happens as well. We could make sure that happens as well.
And just one last question, you mentioned a mixed use might need sprinklers. Give me an example or two or three of what mixed use in the Bradley property would require sprinklers.
A use other than that allowed by an education use, right, other than an education use. Anything that's not normally on an education use, that would require, so if you're mixing uses, some uses require a separation, like a fire separation between the uses, right? Most of the uses you see on campus like this don't have a separation requirement between them. And the reason for the separation requirement is because there's enough difference in what's happening in that space versus another space that people aren't like paying attention to what the other folks are doing, and they don't have a natural connection to each other, which creates risk, right? So like if you had an apartment building, you would, between each apartment, you have a separation requirement. Often apartment buildings have sprinklers. That's.
So if they were to rent it out to some third party that's not educational, would that be a mixed use?
Not necessarily, it just depends on what the use is. And those things aren't really, a rental agreement isn't connected to whether or not you need sprinklers. Right?
Well, I was just trying to, this is a genuine question, I just didn't understand what you meant by mixed use. That's all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just if you have uses that are required to be separated, sometimes in order to have both of them together, you would add the sprinklers.
Okay, so basically the space would stay the same, so you're not seeing that there would be mixed use.
Correct, it's just the uses.
Okay, I thought it was if
I'm sorry,
you used it for something else, that's how I was reading mixed use, but.
Well, it would be, you're using it for something else like permanently, like a whole other.
I'll withdraw the question, I think you,
Sorry, it's confusing.
thank you, I appreciate it, and I appreciate council's indulgence, thank you.
There's no sprinklers in this house then, correct?
There are no sprinklers in the house at the moment, no.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
At this point, we're looking for additional dates. Did you have an opportunity to talk among yourselves or? Okay.
Not really.
How many more are we having, Mr. Eagle?
How many more hearings?
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine there's at least 2 more.
Is the person on mute?
Cheers. Cheers. If somebody's coming through the doors.
2 more.
Or a week or something.
2 more witnesses.
And I want them to others.
So probably finish this.
Okay. And
April 23rd, is that what you're looking at?
April 23rd,
April 23rd is election day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
April 30th?
My land planner advises he's not available that day.
That's your last witness, right?
I have the tree expert, the arborist, and the land planner.
Oh, so three
Each should be
experts?
about 20 minutes, two witnesses. Each should be about 20 minutes.
Thursday, May 2nd.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can't do the second.
April's out. We're at April,
Well, we have a meeting April 9th, and we don't have much on the agenda
Tuesday, next Tuesday, right?
next Tuesday.
Sounds great.
It's my birthday, so just so we're clear. I'm willing to
So
sacrifice
I
that.
may have a problem because my husband's out of town.
You can't do it, Rashid.
I may have an issue if we're gonna go, because I'm gonna be solo parenting,
Oh,
yeah. So,
we said April 11th was out. Land planners not available.
Thursday, April 11th? No, he's not available on the 30th, you said, right?
Not,
I can't do.
Or on the 11th? You can't do the
he has a
11th?
number of dates that he said he can't do April 11, 17, 18, 22, and 30.
Okay, so we're at the week of the 22nd anyway, which is,
April 16th. Wait.
No, I'm out
do
of
we-
town. I'm out of town the 13th through the 17th.
22nd, 23rd?
Guys out on the 22nd.
We already talked about the 23rd. They said no.
and
In 23rd,
You
I'm
said
fine.
it's election.
24th, I got a little league game. Well, I don't have a game.
Yeah.
Coaching,
I'm in
25th,
trial.
good trial, so no, so we're in May anyway, right?
These no good for you, right?
Well, last week of April, right? Well, we did get 29th.
24th zoning hearing board.
20.
So there's 29th. 30th.
Okay, so we.
30th, the land planner's not available. What about the 29th?
Okay, wait.
You're good the 29th?
I'm good the 29th.
I am not, I'll be coming back from New York City, and I have a snack bar duty at the, little.
Oh, that's,
so,
yeah,
Yeah.
keep that.
Just.
No, it's important. I'm saying
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
yeah,
important.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a big.
The 1st.
The whole family's doing it.
Are you?
Wednesday,
Oh, no.
Wait,
I
are we,
teach on
no,
the
we're back
1st.
to May.
I teach on the 1st.
Wednesday, Thursday the 2nd, you can't do Thursdays, right?
No, it depends on what Thursday, the second Thursday, we're
Yeah, Thursday, May 2nd.
reading music is competition.
What time does that start?
Oh, does that work?
Yeah.
May 6th.
6th.
I have a borough council meeting that night.
All right, May 7th.
I'm good.
Okay, wait, may have a winner, wait a second.
Okay.
May 7th. I'm good.
Tuesday, May 7th.
7 AM or 7 PM?
You'll be here by yourself.
How late can we go?
Enjoy your company.
We can, yeah, we'll announce that we'll go.
We're going through midnight.
Can we start at 5? Can we start at 7?
Yeah,
we-
start at
we
5.
can
5:30?
Start as.
No,
soon
I'm
as-
sorry, I can't, I'm not gonna start. at five.
Nice,
Yeah, I want to eat dinner with my family. This is already taking.
Yeah.
6, 7?
6:30 is the earliest I'll go.
Yeah, I've got people to take places.
Yeah.
6:30 then?
May 7th, 6:30, is that it?
Tuesday, May 7th, 6.
And it will go through
7.
midnight.
7.
It's on the record.
Seven would be. Yeah.
Think seven's ideal?
Seven's, yeah, I
Seven's
got,
ideal.
I got
Sounds
five
good.
people going different
Yep.
directions.
Yeah, that's not 4 hours, figure it out, how you get in there. 4 hours. Means that-
I'd suggest that at midnight, that gets a little strenuous.
Nope, we're going through. They're gonna finish with their witnesses.
There's no time limit, right?
Yeah, there's no time limit. Everyone has notice. It's on the record. Thank you all for your cooperation.
Seven.
We may, I mean, look, we may be through Benchmark's witnesses in the first hour and a half or so. So come prepared to start your testimony. Yeah.
Do you wanna pick another date?
We can pick a date far into June. I'm out on medical.
June gets sexy.
Beginning week of June 17th. Yeah, this is where it gets dicey.
I'll be
Yeah, I was
away
gonna
the whole
say, this
week.
is getting dicey.
Yeah.
Last day of school is Wednesday the 12th.
I know.
Friday the 14th.
Yeah. And then I'm out the last week of June.
All right,
So now we're in July.
into July. And then I'm out the entire month of August, so you gotta find it in July.
I was gonna say, and I'm out 2 weeks in August.
Do we have to do this now?
You'll figure
I was
out.
gonna say, yeah, do we have to do this now? We don't have to do this now.
We don't have to choose a second date now.
I thought we were gonna do that calendar thing.
We can do
I
that.
like that idea.
Yeah.
Who volunteered to set that up?
Carl, what is the,
I'll take care of it.
Okay.
so what is the, we
We did like 45
Do you
days
have
or
this?
something.
have this next meeting and then what comes after that? Like, what is the purpose of having a second meeting? Because we need to hear the others.
This in anticipation that the protestants are gonna have more than 2 hours of testimony.
What would your cutoff the time be? You go past midnight, we'll be here till 2 AM or is there a time?
I mean, I think we're trying to move this along.
So for everybody, to speed it along, absolutely.
And I think, you know, when it comes to midnight, you know, we'll just try and finish whatever witnesses testifying at midnight. So, are we ready to put this on the record? So the hearing is being continued until Tuesday, May 7th at 6:30 PM.
No, 7 PM, 7 PM, right?
7?
Yep,
Yes.
7 PM.
Tuesday, May 7th at 7 PM. That's gonna be for Benchmark's final 2 witnesses. At that point, when they rest their case, the protestants are gonna begin presenting their witnesses and evidence. And just for the record, we're going to continue until hopefully we can get as many witnesses in that night as possible. So that it may extend beyond the midnight hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adjourn.
We're done, right? Thanks.
Yep.